If the left were to go out there and put as much energy and focus into solving problems as they do in trying to find creative ways to push false narratives, I would say a lot of problems would be solved in the United States. But the problem is the left isn't interested in actually going through and solving any problems that we face. They're not there to try and go off and say, hey, let's come together. Instead, they're there trying to push off a false narrative that perpetuates the problem, that goes off and actually is counterproductive to what it is they claim to be wanting to do. So the left is out there now with their whole trying to downplay the violence and terrorism by groups such as Antifa and Black Lives Matter. Now, they've been doing this for a long time, where they try to say, oh, mostly peaceful protests, fiery, but mostly peaceful protests. So the left is out there now trying to find a way to spin the narrative as to say, oh, these protests aren't the problem. It's Trump's reaction. And which, by the way, they're not protests. It's these riots are not the problem. The murders, the arson, the complete destruction of communities, that's not the problem. The problem is Trump's reaction to the violence, death, and domestic terrorism. So here is what the left is out there trying to push here in order to downplay all the criminal activities by Black Lives Matter and Antifa.
That was our first statue that we did with the Bible, holding it up as the protesters, BLM protesters were being beaten. And it was a statue-like moment, it's a defining moment of his presidency. And the fact that he was out protecting statues in such a way, with soldiers and with Homeland Security, to protect statues, well, we're going to give you statues that you're not going to want to look at because you're looking at yourself.
Well, the first thing I was thinking was, what is this? Until I read what it was, and I was like, oh, it's a display. And then I'm like, I get it when you guys say relic. Like, he's more worried about this statue that's not alive than the people that are actually alive. That's all I could think.
Now, just when you think that the left has hit peak stupid, they go off and prove there's more stupid to go. One of my favorite quotes here is that the big difference between genius and stupidity is that genius has its limits. Okay, so now they're going off here, and with the statues that they displayed, what do? They go, BLM being hit by police officers with Trump holding the Bible. This is them trying to push the false narrative that the police are systemically racist and targeting black people. They ignore all the facts and evidence of every case that comes out in order to push that narrative, no matter how many times that's debunked. Like the latest case, where the suspect was actually charging at the police with a knife. And the police, was pleading with the guy, drop the weapons, stop. They tried backing away in order to give the guy more space so that he would feel less threatened, so that he would drop the damn knife. But instead, what does he do? He goes off and he charges at the police officer, forcing them to defend themselves. We have even seen cases where the left was upset and pushing this whole, police killing, innocent black people, when it was caught on video that the person drew their weapon, shot at the police officer, missed, and then died when the police officer returned fire. I mean, if you're now at the situation saying it is inappropriate for the police to defend themselves, even when they're being actively shot at by a suspect, you're not interested in the truth. You're a complete and total fraud. And what do? What do they claim to be acts of protest? They go in and they rob and loot Walmart, Target, or anywhere else that has something that they want to get for free because they don't want to pay for it. And then what are they going to do? They're going to, either keep it, hey, free stuff, or they're going to turn around and try and sell it on eBay to make a little bit of profit themselves. They don't care. They don't care about any of these situations. They don't care about the truth, and they don't care about the people who died. They just only care about what's the narrative that they can push in order to fundraise on, or what narrative they can push in order to be able to get away with looting and getting free TVs. So they're complete and total fraud. Now, the other guy in this video, Trump cares more about these statues than he does about the people. Now that guy is a total moron who has no idea what's going on. Why is it that Trump is going off and protecting federal statues? Well, because there were riots. There were acts of domestic terrorism going on. But the city and the states would not allow Trump to come in and stop the violence. As far as the Democrats were concerned, let them burn down the cities. Let them burn down the communities. Let them, go ahead and, do actions that result in people's deaths. Now, the left was completely content with that because they were just thinking, okay, we'll let them do this. We'll support them. We'll get votes, and then we'll get federal emergency dollars in order to rebuild our communities with and be able to pay people off, to rebuild whatever. Surprise, surprise, Trump was not going along with the whole, well, you let them burn them down. Why should we give you federal taxpayer money in order to rebuild? This wasn't a natural disaster or anything out of your control. This was an active decision by you not to do anything to stop the violence. But because of our system of federalism, Trump couldn't send in federal troops to quell the violence in the city. All he could do is protect federal property. Now, it would be one thing if the statues were going off and being taken down legitimately, which means there was, a vote, either, within the city, the city council, a vote in the state legislature, or at the federal level of, a decision made by a legitimate body to take it down, maybe replace it, whatever. That's not a problem. But random people just showing up and destroying property, they were committing crimes doing so. They were just going off and just randomly showing up and going, we're going to cause all this destruction of property. We're going to engage in domestic terrorism. And then they're like, Trump is more concerned about the statues. Let's try and go through and explain this a little bit further here. Violence unchecked just begets more violence. If you let people get away with this level of violence without any repercussions, they continue to escalate the violence until they have to suffer a consequence for it. So the longer they go without consequence, the more and more violent they get. And we have seen this. We have seen this all across liberal cities. The more they go unpunished for the violence they commit, the more extreme violence they commit. And so when Trump is going out there and protecting federal lands, federal property, things that the president is supposed to do, protect us from terrorism threats, both foreign and domestic. The fact that he was actually doing his job, they're upset at because, well, they don't like this building. They don't like this statue, and they want to illegally tear it down, and they're upset that somebody is there to enforce the law, that somebody is there to block their criminal activities. But by doing so and making them know that, hey, you're not going to be able to get away with this, you need to start getting yourself in check. Had Trump done nothing, the violence would continue to escalate more than it has. So when it comes down to it, it's not about protecting the federal statues. It's not about, the inanimate buildings. Protecting the statues was about protecting lives. By quelling the violence, just by blocking them from tearing down a statue, just by blocking them from burning a building, they were able to quell the violence down a notch or two. They were, because they were able to stop the violence, take some of the wind out of the sails of the violent actors, because they weren't able to get away with it. Now you could say, oh yeah, but they just moved on to other targets. Yeah, but they still had to expend some energy in their attempts. And some of them, arrested. Now, of course, the Democrats would go off and release the criminals from the prison so they can continue to burn down cities. But these idiots don't realize that when you let violence go unchecked, it just leads to continued escalation of violence. And they don't understand that. They're just like, well, we just don't like the statue. Well, have you thought about bringing it up to city council to have it removed? No, that takes too much effort. It's a lot easier to just throw a Molotov cocktail at it. it's just a lot easier to pull it down with a rope than it is to show up at a city council meeting and, motion them to take up the issue of removing the statue. All right. And guess what? Not everybody agrees with them. That's another problem. The left, if they come across a situation where people do not agree with them, rather than engage in debate, arguing their issues, and putting it to a vote, they just violently assault the person they disagree with and then burn down whatever they don't like. That's the modern day leftist. That is the tolerance, the tolerance we keep hearing about. Well, you said something, I disagree with it. Let's pound you into the ground and beat you to a bloody pulp and celebrate if you die. That's the tolerant left. I don't like this, so I'm just going to burn down this community. That's the tolerant left. Do they not understand how insane or how stupid they sound? Do they not understand this? No, of course not. Because they're delusional. They're complete morons. They got themselves wrapped up completely and totally into politics where they believe that everything's an existential threat to them. Therefore, they're justified in whatever action they take. And we see this. We see this with the Supreme Court nomination as well, where people are so emotionally invested, they break down crying. And of course, as they record themselves crying over the Supreme Court nomination, they expose themselves as frauds, phonies, and just playing to the crowd in order to get those social media likes, that influencer status. And they're complete frauds. So take a look at this video and see what a complete moron this person is.
Don't mind me, I'm in the bath, but while I'm in here, I got a notification that Amy Coney Barrett was officially confirmed to the Supreme Court. I didn't think I would be this affected by it, but I'm scared. I'm scared for me, other women, people who need help. Everyone except white men. So, please vote next week. Let's try to do something.
Bravo, bravo. That was some great acting right there. I mean, you could really be a Hollywood star with acting skills that good. So first of all, I don't know how many people are actually just sitting in their bathtub, going through and just scrolling through their phone or recording videos. I'm not sure what the likelihood of that is. I'm pretty sure that leads to a lot of dropped and damaged phones if that were to be the case. But notice she goes through, first of all, she's upset as a woman that a woman was nominated and confirmed to the Supreme Court. Go figure that one. But then she goes off and goes, I didn't know I'd be affected by it. And then she goes, I'm just scared for everyone except white men. Right? You notice how she had to put that in. She had enough clarity to go, except white men. So somehow white men are just assumed not to be affected by a woman being nominated to the Supreme Court. That somehow this affects everybody. Of course, this person is a complete moron wrapped up in a media bubble where everything's a threat. And, the white male patriarchy, I'm pretty sure if that's the case, if she's in a relationship, it's not with a man, because that is a level of crazy that no man is willing to deal with. So she goes off and makes sure to go, except for the, white man. And then she goes off and says, vote, vote, vote. I mean, this was just nothing but a campaign ad, for the Democrats, a generic campaign ad for the Democrats with someone with the skills of a Hollywood actor. But let's say, just for the sake of argument, let's say this was someone genuinely reacting. This is what they truly feel, truly believe this deeply. Get a life. If you have your emotions, your well-being so wrapped up in who does win or not win in a political race, or who does and doesn't get nominated to the Supreme Court. You are a freaking loser being that emotionally wrapped up, where your entire life is devastated emotionally based on the outcome of a vote, based off of a seat being filled at the Supreme Court. You are a complete and total loser. Get a damn life. I don't know any sane, rational, well-adjusted person that is this emotionally wrapped up into politics. I mean, you need to just turn off Facebook, clear your cookies, go through your phone, your web browser, your entire search history, clear it all out so that Facebook can start giving you, more, if you're not familiar with the algorithm, so that you get out of that media bubble and maybe go through and put in some search terms for the opposite side of the political spectrum so that you can start getting a well-rounded perspective. I mean, if you're only listening to liberal media, you are not an emotionally well-adjusted person. You have gone insane. And you know what? Even for conservatives, don't just go out there and listen only to conservative content and outlets. Go out there and check what the other side has to say. Now, of course, they're insane, but still go through and try and figure out what the hell it is they're trying to talk about and what they're trying to justify their claims on. Now, if you do that, if you actually go through and listen to conservatives and listen to liberals, you'll always lean towards the conservatives because they actually engage in a lot of conversation. Now, this YouTube channel, I try to keep the videos, somewhat short, not long enough to go into really deep dives, but more of a high level overview. So, we go through there and we take a look at this person, and I just feel sad for him. I just feel just sad for them that this is what their life is. This is how much of a life they don't have. I've never seen anybody in any real life situation, whether it's my wife, my mom, sister, cousins, friends. I've never seen anybody break down crying because their politician, their preferred candidate, didn't win office. I've never seen anyone cry because they didn't like the Supreme Court nomination. Who does that? These are emotionally unstable people. They're unable to grasp any sense of reality, whether it's from the issue with the statues early on, in the first clip that I showed, or whether it's this person. All right? And all I can think of as far as advice goes, get a life.